ago.
I forgot to start the recording until now.
Yeah.
Something I said 2 weeks ago.
You might have even said it 2 weeks ago. And then I finally was thinking about it. Oh, mystery. Mystery of life. Go with the flow. Don't try to like micromanage kind of thing. Mystery, accepting life as it comes to you. Mystery, accepting that it's a mystery. That just kind of dawned on me recently. You know, I mean, you might have said it like,
that's cool.
so that's kind of
really
like a
cool.
delayed listening. I don't know what that is. That's kind of like a delayed listen.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too. Kind of like it settles in. Like I love what you're describing too, because it really does. All of a sudden, it's kind of like what they say. It's like, there's listening to the words, right? Just what you were pointing to just now, Lori. But then it's like that something deeper, like settled in for you, Jen. That's so cool. Like when that happens, like all of a sudden it kind of is like, oh, mystery. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that was like an insight, right?
Right, because I didn't really interpret the mystery as being the mystery of life. Do you know what I mean? I interpret it as, okay, we're all meeting together to discuss perceptions, I guess.
Mm.
So I got a different idea about it today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so cool.
Like the next minute is a mystery because we don't know what could happen the next minute.
And we almost have to get comfortable with that, which is sometimes uncomfortable for me.
Me too.
Yeah, getting comfortable. Well, there is a lot of talk in the Three Principles community through the years about getting comfortable or being good with not knowing.
Right, right.
And that's really what you're saying, right? That we don't know what the next minute is going to bring. And so relaxing with not knowing. Yeah, because I think from the very beginning in school, we're taught to know. Like we're supposed to know. And I remember like my first job where I would pretend that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was afraid to show that how was I supposed to know?
Right, at your first job, right. You don't know.
You don't know. There is absolutely no shame in asking a question, but I felt shame, like somehow I was supposed to know these things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a waitressing job in a really fancy restaurant in New Haven. I wonder if it's still there, the Tivoli. It was owned by Sophia Loren had something to do with this restaurant. So there I am, a freshman in college. Who knows anything when you're a freshman in college, right? It was my first waitressing job that my big sister gave me. And I'm in this really swanky restaurant. I'm like, what are you, 18? When you're in this really highfalutin? I was clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. Nobody trained me. I didn't even know that you're supposed to be trained. I had never been to a fancy restaurant, much less a really fancy restaurant. And I pretended like I knew what I was doing.
That's kind of hard waitressing too. That's a hard
job. It's hard.
It is a hard job, right? The waitresses don't get nearly enough respect, I don't think. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's so funny. I haven't thought of that story in 100 years. But
funny.
I did something like that around that same time, and I was hostessing and then doing a little waitressing, and I just remember somebody, and I didn't know a lot either, and somebody came and asked about filet mignon, and I thought it was like some kind of wine. They were like, no. And I was like, oh, okay, guess that's how we learn. But me too, that you feel like you're supposed to know, or that it's somehow there's some shame in not knowing, so you have to pretend that you know.
Yeah.
Or that's how it's felt to me.
Yeah, my uncle got in really big trouble with that. He was on an engagement dinner with his future in-laws. And so they bring, the sommelier brings the bottle of wine and gives him the cork, which I guess I wouldn't know myself, but he learned later that you're supposed to smell it.
Smell, yeah.
He bit into it
Oops. Hey, that makes for a really good story, doesn't it? Like those are the kind of stories you end up like having for life.
Right. It was a good laugh for many, many family dinners through the years, and he was older than 18. So it proves that, you could be any age trying to fake not knowing, I mean, what a
It's
funny
hard.
story.
I find it really hard to be comfortable with not planning, not knowing, not anticipating, not, I have a hard time with all that. I really do. I want to plan. I want to make there no bumps in the road. I want, I want to anticipate. I want to do all that.
Yeah. Sounds very familiar. I think that to me is the like me too, I've noticed so much of that, and that it's like that there's a certain amount of like faith that comes with like when you start to kind of play with like, okay, well, what if I don't know? Or what if I just like allow the not knowing to be here? Because I was having a lot of that earlier today of like kind of just, can I just like wait, like kind of just like, I don't know what's going to happen, but could I just stay with it? And I think that to me, it feels like it's like something that grows, like the more that you kind of just, I don't know, I don't even know if play with it is the right thing, but, and then you kind of see, oh, it was okay. Like, it was okay that I didn't know. And then something occurred to me, like, that's kind of what I've been seeing more and more lately is like, oh, and often it does really feel like things like work out really well.
Yeah. Right. And you feel maybe that at that moment you're more in the moment, right? Because you're not planning it.
Right. Exactly.
And things that you couldn't have like thought of, right? Like when I would be trying to plan it, it's like that's like something else. Like, I don't know, I think that's what you just said, Jen. Like it's a kind of what I've been finding is that something that I hadn't expected would come up, and then I don't know, that I wouldn't have thought of in my planning. And I am a big, planner in the sense of like wanting to avoid any kind of unknowns that might be scary, to avoid feeling uncomfortable.
Right.
But then I think that's what's been so awesome about this understanding is it's like just to keep seeing like it's the complete opposite of what I thought. Like I thought like somehow that you can control the outside enough to avoid feeling something, and then to kind of learn, oh, it doesn't actually work that way anyway. Like you're just going to feel all kinds of things no matter what you try to arrange. And I think that was one of the things that hit me so much in that first chapter was how he was saying like, he was so disappointed that Hawaii wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And I was like, oh my gosh, that hit me so much, because that's been like most of the, my life up until the last couple of years is like, like kind of just keep hoping like, I kept thinking, this outside thing is going to do it. And then when it didn't, being disappointed, and then to kind of learn, it never works that way anyway. I don't know. It just, it tickled me to like,
because he said he was bringing his same problems wherever he was, right? Wherever he was, it was his same self, right?
Right. And same thinking.
The same thinking.
Yeah. One of the things that jumped out at me that I did not see in my first reading, and I don't even know if I saw it in the second reading of Second Chance, but what jumped out at me this time is how all of a sudden they're like these little flashbacks. All of a sudden, Sid brings us in the moment. That the two of them are noticing this beautiful scene in front of them, or even just Richard himself. All of a sudden, he's like caught off guard, and he notices something really beautiful, and then he remembers his problems.
Right.
And this beautiful scene vanishes, and he's in his head thinking about all the problems and planning and trying to figure it out and what's the next step. And so I love the way Sid goes back and forth in that book throughout the whole book.
So part of it, he's like in this beautiful place, right? And he's sitting, I don't know if he's in the restaurant or if he's at the beach. And then he notices all these happy couples, right? And then he's like, well, now I'm kind of lonely because I notice all these happy couples and I'm alone, originally. And I don't know, I really got that. I got that. But I thought, oh, you're wasting Hawaii.
But don't we all do that? We all
Yeah.
do that. We could be in such a beautiful place, but it's so easy to get caught up in the what isn't.
Yeah.
In the negativity, in the expectation, in anything that's negative. It's so easy to get sucked into it. But when you realize that that is not fruitful, it's never fruitful. It never brings you clarity. It doesn't bring you, a direction to go in. It just makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
It's not productive. And when you see that enough, I think that's when you see that that's not a road you want to take. I mean, that's what happened for me, that just incrementally, I would see more and more that going down that negative path doesn't do anything for me. And it certainly doesn't do anything for anybody else.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to figure out in that negative path. It's really interesting how we can like play that game. We don't realize it's a game. We actually think that we're going to get something out of going down that negative path, or thinking about, like you both have children, thinking about how your kids should be doing something other than what they're doing. Even if they're not doing anything egregious, they're not doing any, they're not stealing, they're not
No.
doing drugs. Hopefully they're not doing anything really bad.
Yeah. I think it's like it just what you were saying, Laurie. I know for myself too with that is that it looked like for so long that you needed to go down that somehow, that there were answers there, right? And so it's, again, for me, it's been this faith of like kind of trusting, like, no, don't do that. Like almost like I love when, in the book that Jonathan kind of says to Richard, like, oh, why don't you just go and enjoy yourself, or something kind of along those lines in the beginning, and just thinking like, it just feels so counter to what we grow up learning, to like, in those moments when I'm really like, oh my God, this thing is happening and I need to figure it out. And it's like, and then to be like, oh, well, what if I just didn't try to figure it out and did something, or just enjoyed myself, or did something else? And it almost feels like, oh my gosh, can you do that? Like, would that be okay? And I think that's where, for me, the faith of playing with it has kind of come in, is like, just to see, like, when I go in that direction of like, what if I don't follow it, like you said? And then it's just getting to kind of see, oh, it actually does work well when I don't keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's kind of counter to what I grew up believing, so it's hard for me to get out of that pattern, because what I believed was that when I have a feeling about something, right? I think of it as a feeling, not a thought, but a feeling about something, like it's actually a message being sent to me, that I should pay attention to it. But no, because it really originates from a thought, and the thought might be not even that very important,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so right on. It's so true that I think we all have this idea that our thoughts are messages from somewhere.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to pay attention to them.
It originates from a thought, and then I have a feeling about that thought, and it's validated as important, and no.
And like the scarier it is, the more you're like, oh, I really need to pay attention to this specific, or thinking, and it's like to kind of learn, or to be seeing like, no, actually it's kind of the opposite. It's a little disorienting.
Yeah.
It's
In a good way.
disorienting at first,
A good
but
way.
it is the opposite.
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the opposite. And you use your own life like as a laboratory. You can see when you're going through your life, like, well, that didn't work out. Trying to micromanage everything here just made people mad at me. And
believing, and believing that my thoughts were more important than others sometimes, you know?
Yes, yes,
It's like,
yes,
why-
right? Right. Like we think we know, they don't know. Like we know, even if it has to do with their life, like we know more about their life than they do. And that, you know, that's the way it looks for, I think, most people. I don't know if, you know, society hasn't helped any to
No,
flip
true.
us around and turn us right side up. Society is just really added to that whole belief that we're supposed to figure everything out.
Yeah.
That we're in charge of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like along those lines, when you were saying that, Jen, and then thinking about what you started with, Lori, and as you were kind of talking about that deeper listening, I was kind of like, oh, wow. I think like when my husband was talking yesterday, and even when my daughter was talking like earlier, I could see that I was doing the little listening and not the passive listening, and just how different it is and how different it feels when you're not. So I can see how when you mentioned that, I really was focusing on the content of what they were saying instead of just the feeling of, you know, where, you know, in their heart they were coming from. And it's a very different interaction. But so it's just nice to be reminded of that.
Yeah, that was a great example, Linda, that, you know, listening to solve a problem, right? That's so commonplace for people listening, and they, you know, with best intentions, they want to help the person, they want to solve the problem, as opposed to listening to take them in, listening to connect. Right. Like trying to solve their problem is actually disconnecting.
Yeah. Right.
When you think about it, right? Because it's like saying, well, I know better than you know. That's it. It's not very connecting.
No. And they could probably at that point want you just to join them in that moment, you know? And if I'm trying to solve something, then I'm not really, I'm not with them in that moment. I know for my kids.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But if Spencer's in the car telling me something, he doesn't want me to solve it. He wants me to relate to it or hear what he's saying. So now I try to kind of do that.
Yeah.
And the feeling totally, as they say, like, you know, the feeling really does like let you know, because when I just was thinking about the two different instances, like, you know, when my husband was sharing with me and I was kind of just thinking, like, I was thinking, no, like you're missing the point is what I'm thinking to him. And it's like, no, I'm missing the point because I'm, you know, not really being with him. And so it is just so interesting, like that and I just how that feeling of like, it didn't feel really nice, you know, and just again, when you listen, or my experience has been when you listen, you know, in that passive way, that you get that really nice feeling because you really are just kind of very connected to the person.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting discussion. Yeah. And it's how to listen to Sid also, like, you know, I might hear him say the same thing, but if I already know what he's going to say, I'm going to miss how it affects me. Because you could hear the same exact thing and it'd be greatly affected by it one time and not affected by it another time.
Yeah.
Right? So, and yeah, listening really is an interesting thing.
Yeah. Oh
It's
my goodness.
a doing without doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I marked off a couple of things in the first chapter. Let me throw it out to you. Yeah, like just what we were talking about. The drive into Lahaina had some incredible scenery, but my mind was so busy, I couldn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right? And we all do that. Once again, my disappointment in Hawaii swept over me.
It's awful. Right.
And he's missing, meanwhile, he's disappointed. He's missing the beauty right there in front of him. Yeah.
And I just think like that too, just how much, again, like just thinking about how much it looked like to me that those outside things were going to be bringing me my good feelings, and so when you're looking in that way, it's just, and again, even though I have a sense of it now, it's so unconscious because I can just, that at times it looks that way, unconsciously to me again, like that, something not being the way that I expect, is a bummer, or like seems like brings me down. But to keep kind of looking in this direction, it's so cool because it kind of, you kind of go, or is that the way it is? Or, is there something else to see?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And I could see how that could affect, I guess taking that another step is like in relationships, right? In our relationships in life, if we look at the people that we know every day or the people that we're involved with, we typically see maybe those habits that really irritate us, and we don't see the whole person, right? Sometimes of all the parts that bring us joy.
Right.
Because we're so used to those parts that bring us joy. And we're like, oh, but why does he have to snore? Why do they have to do this one thing? Why?
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting too, when a person, whether it's a child or an adult relationship or a marriage, what have you, the same behavior when you're in that feeling of love is sweet, adorable, funny. But when you're in a frustrated feeling, it's annoying, bothersome, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's our state of
be
mind.
the
It's not what they're
same
doing.
quality. It could be the same quality that they're doing, whether
Yeah.
you can look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Right. 1 minute you're like, that's so adorable. And then it's like, oh, that's not adorable.
And the only thing that's changed, it's the same snore, snort, whatever. The only thing that's changed is your state of mind.
Yeah.
The way you're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not like you can decide to think about something in a good way, but it's state of mind related. I mean, we automatically, like Linda was saying, looking in this direction automatically puts us in a better state of mind more often.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, we could all agree. We've all seen that.
Oh, definitely.
Which is bizarre and wild in itself. That just looking in the direction of the principles puts people in a better state of mind more often.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Oh, yeah.
And so with that, we're just more apt to see the beauty in things than to spend time in the negative.
Yeah.
Like we're not as we're less tolerant of the negative. So we don't go there as often. It's like a
Yeah.
no-brainer. If I can feel
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
why am I going to go in the direction of negativity and feel bad? I mean,
Uh,
but like Jonathan in the book or Richard in the book, he learns that, and he sees that's why the sequel, In Search of the Pearl, is what he just, now he's this really altered person and he sees life so differently.
mm,
What's cool about reading the sequel. But yeah, it takes like the whole book for him to start to catch on. It's not an overnight thing.
and still, like, it's so amazing, like, just to even think how, like, though how quickly you can have such a shift, or just had, like, just thinking about how he's not there. Well, in the story, he's there for how long, and just what a shift he has, just, thinking about that. And that is, and I feel like, I know for me, it was, pretty big, but it was a big shift. But I think I remember when I first learned this, that I was very anxious, and it took probably like a full year before that really shifted a lot. But it was so comforting, though, just even to, like you said, Lori, like, just to be looking in this direction of, like, wait a minute, maybe my anxiety isn't telling me something really awful about myself and about my life. Maybe it's really just telling me that, I have a lot on my mind. And, like, that just kept, like, it was comforting. Just, whether even at times I was like, I don't know, can that possibly be true? But just to even consider it was so comforting.
That it was just having a lot on your mind, that the content was not important.
Right.
But
Right.
seeing how it worked, that it just meant a lot was on your mind.
Right. That my mind was just very busy, or, just running. And that it wasn't really telling me what I thought it was telling me.
Yeah.
Which is very scary.
Yeah. That's
I think it's hard.
great. Yeah.
Maybe it's hard to recognize that it doesn't serve a purpose. That's where we, do you know what I mean? It's really hard to recognize that. Like, I always feel like I'm going back to that. Oh, but if I think it and I feel it, it must serve a purpose. And I'm like, no, it doesn't serve a purpose that benefits me, right? It doesn't.
The content
Right.
doesn't serve a purpose, right? I would say the purpose is to wake us up to the fact that we're too busy-minded. We're in our head too much.
Right.
So you get a bad feeling, and before this paradigm shift or seeing this new direction, we would all think, well, this bad feeling must be telling us something, like to take revenge, or beat this person up, or talk sense into them, or some negative thing. And all it's telling us is, you are thinking too much.
Right. Yeah.
And then you clear your head. You clear your mind the best you can, and you can see more clearly.
Yeah, it's amazing. It almost feels too simple. Like, I think that's the other thing. It's like, just, again, because you just grow up learning, like, being kind of moved or being taught that, like, it is significant, or, like, I mean, I know I, did some therapy, counseling, and did some stuff with my family when I was like a teenager. And in lots of ways, some of it was really very helpful, but to be kind of, but to think that it's so much of it is really significant, or you have to keep rehashing it over and over again. So you kind of just think, oh, I guess it is really important. And if I'm angry with somebody, then that must be important. And I probably need to work that out with them and need to do these different things. And then to learn like, oh no, like, it's so much simpler with this understanding, but you kind of feel like, could it really be that? That you wait till you feel better and then see if there's even anything to do or to say.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
You can see how it really shifts things instead of making a big mess that you then have to clean up.
Yeah.
You just, and it's not like you're pushing things under the carpet or smoothing things over that need to be talked about, because you wait until you're feeling better. And sometimes there are things to be talked about. Yeah. Like whether you're going to have another child or, big things, when to trade in the car, whether the kids should go to private school or public school. There are big things to talk about. But you want to be, as close to all parties as possible involved in the discussion, want to be in a nice, loving frame of mind.
Mm.
Like if you're thinking about taking revenge or getting back at somebody or, giving them a piece of your mind or letting them know they should treat you a certain way. If you're in that state of mind, what's that going to do? The other one's just going to feel criticized. But if you realize, well, they're not treating me that well because they're not in a good place.
Yeah.
It really isn't about me. It's about where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think like when you get to the point where you're having those important conversations or like to make those decisions, again, like not being a micromanager kind of, or stepping back from the micromanager and just really having the curiosity about what the other person's thinking and how they're thinking about things.
Yes.
Like I feel like that helps.
Yes.
Just really being curious about their perception.
Yes.
Because
Without
I used
judgment.
to think that their perception was likely my perception, but now I realize that their perception is very rarely my perception. So just having a curiosity, helped me. Because I wouldn't get into those entanglements if I was at a curious place. Now I don't get that. I'm like, okay, you have a different perception than me. I'll listen to it. I might not agree with it, but I'll listen because now at least I have curiosity about what you think, right?
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
So that's kind of helpful now.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't think I had that before. I think I was always trying to push what I believed about the important things.
You're not alone, Jen, that's for sure.
Yeah, seriously, you're not alone at all. I think that's kind of too, that's what's so neat about what you're describing is that, like, I don't know, like just how much all of it is so made up, or, just all the beliefs of things and that we have about, what it looks like. And so when you're open like that, like you're describing, to listen to somebody and where they're coming from, it is kind of neat. Because I think it's been really interesting to me lately that when I've listened the way that you were describing, Jen, like a couple of times, like I thought what people were thinking was very different than what they were thinking. And then I kind of felt silly afterwards because I'm like, oh, that really wasn't what they, where they were going. And then, it was kind of nice because I don't know. Anyway, I can see where misunderstandings happen because we get so like in our mind about what's happening or what they're even thinking. And then when you actually take the time to like listen a little bit more and listen deeply, often it's different than I think, which in a good way.
That's been a big thing for me, like recently. Yeah. I think that's made a big change for me.
And how has that affected these relationships that you're listening more with curiosity?
I think I'm really learning about who the people are more authentically. I'm getting like they're more contributing what they're thinking,
Do you feel closer with them? Or do they feel closer with you?
I don't know if they feel closer with me, but I feel like I am discovering parts of them that are authentic instead of my impression of who they are, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that would be like getting closer to the
Yeah.
real person.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So that is like getting closer. Yeah. That's really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I started as a little bit of an experiment, though. I thought, okay, I'm going to try not to push my agenda.
You're gonna try what?
Not to push my agenda on things. I wasn't really hooked to like really, you know, to the idea, but now I realize that there's this benefit.
Yeah, right?
I have to try things in small doses, Lori. It's small changes for a little amount of time.
Well, it's true. I mean, we have to see the benefit in something to go in
Yeah.
that direction. That's true.
Right.
Otherwise, why would we just take somebody's
Try.
word for it? You have to see it for yourself.
Mm.
It's so true.
Hmm.
Oh, we got about 15 more minutes. How about if I read another section that I marked off? It's a lot in here.
Cool.
Like this one, I really love this one. I really love this one too, so I'll go with this one. Page 9. He gazed at me with total compassion on his face and answered, "The trouble is, you see this world as the only reality that exists.
Right.
You have trapped yourself on a level of consciousness. You must learn to take the limitations off life and see there are more realities than meet the eye."
Oh, that's so good.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
really what you just said, Jen. It was like that kind of just, you know, when you kind of don't assume, you know, what you think you know about someone else. To me, that's that same difference. It's like it kind of leaves you open to seeing a new reality. I don't know. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
I think what I love about that too, because I underlined it as well, is like, you know, like with this, obviously, like we're not so like you can't really try to like think your way to like, okay, I'm going to think my way to a new reality, but just even to like, but just to, I don't know, it's like just to even ponder it or just to be like, wow, like, you know, like what if that's true? I don't know, there just feels like there's something very, again, comforting about that. Like just to think, even if I don't know what that new reality is yet, but just to even consider like, wow, there could be something else to see, like, again, in a good way, feels really nice.
And I love it that he says you're not stuck, right? The not stuck part, right? Because sometimes when like if you're a big planner and you're an anticipator, you can't see all the possibilities that your life can become, right?
Mm.
Because you say to yourself, oh, I can't do that. Oh, that's not going to happen for me, you know?
Right.
But that's not necessarily true because
Yeah.
It makes for more openness. You're open to
Yeah.
see what occurs from a deeper place, from a more intelligent place, really. Right? Because if we're quiet in our thinking, we're tapping into a more wisdom, you know, wisdom of the universe.
Yeah.
That thing that directs us when you know, and there are a lot of things in history about this, or, you know, stories that you'll read where people get really caught off guard. They're in the middle of like a traumatic situation, and somehow it works out because there's something kicks in and they take care of the situation. You know, like the people lifting cars up. I mean, crazy stuff. I'm not even talking about crazy stuff. I'm talking about the everyday thing.
Yeah.
That you just see what to do. And that's coming not from here, because this takes time and you have to figure it out and calculate. But wisdom, man, it's like immediate.
Right.
It's so interesting. Like I remember reading this story in Reader's Digest. I don't even know, do they still publish Reader's Digest? I don't know.
So
but anyway, it was this story about a conductor on a train, bizarre story. And he sees this thing on the railroad track ahead of him, but he realizes that he's putting his foot on the brake, but it's, you know, and pumping it, whatever you do for a railroad car. And it wasn't going to stop in time. And he thought it might be a dog or something, you know, he didn't know if it was just a paper bag or if it's a dog. Well, he gets close enough that he pushes the thing away and the thing survived, and the thing was a baby.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that wild? And all these reporters come out and they're like, you know, interviewing him. How did you think so fast? How did you know what to do? He says, I have no idea. It just happened. It just happened.
Right.
I love that.
You know, and like there's part of us, I think we've been educated to be almost afraid of letting go. Like what's going to be there if we let go?
Yeah.
What'll be there is a deeper wisdom. But yeah, I don't know. We've all been schooled to hold on and to direct things and make things happen. I've done more things in my life when I wasn't trying to do them. You know, like I'll look back and I'll say, well, how did that book get written? Because I did not set out to write any of the 3 books I've been involved in. It was never, ever on my to-do list to write a book.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
good.
Crazy, really crazy stuff like that.
I think it's like, and that it's stuff just like that, Lori, that's like just so helpful to like to take in. Because again, I think it's, to me too, growing up, it's like, 20 ways to succeed, or, it's like, which is pretty much you doing it, like you, and so it, it doesn't really feel like well, to me, and I think they're obviously throughout history, there've been people pointing to just, to things like this understanding, but it definitely felt like you had to get in there. And so it's so fun to hear you say, like some of these things, and I can think of things too that just happened when, without all that efforting, or without, trying hard to make it happen. And I don't know, it's fun to just keep being reminded of that, or to be like, just like, oh, it really does happen that way, or it can happen that way, or
yeah.
I think it was that too, that above the quote that you were sharing, I underlined too, and I loved so much, was when he said, Jonathan said to Richard that it appears to me that you have no hope, but one should never feel hopeless because there is always an answer to everything. And I loved that line so much, because I know there have been times in my life where I definitely wasn't feeling very, very hopeful, and to just, I don't know, just again, that to look in that direction, or to just to even like have like, wow, like what if there really is an answer to everything, and it's, and I don't have to come up with it or whatever. It's, I don't know, that just again feels so comforting, even if you don't know what it is, but just to hold that feels, just feels really nice.
Yeah, that's another great line in there, that's for sure. Trusting, right? And when you see it happening, when you see that life is so much easier than you ever thought, and you see that over and over, you get to trust that more. That's how it looks to me, anyway.
Well, and it ties in so much with what, when you were the part you read about the levels of consciousness, like that you get trapped in a level of consciousness. And I think it's like just to know that, that we could see something else, or it's not the only reality. Again, that just feels so hopeful, or to just know that, you could see something else. I don't know, again, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when it's particularly helpful is when you don't like what you're seeing,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
you remember, well, you know what? There's another way to see this. I'm not seeing it right now. I don't know when I'll see another way, but I know that there is a different way to look at it. Just know you're right. Just knowing
which goes back to the very beginning of our conversation of listening, right? Or listening, because maybe what we heard is not what we heard, but maybe we could process it later in a different way, right?
Mm.
When we're in a better space or a different space.
Yeah.
When there's less demands on us at the time, or something like that.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it might occur to us to check it out with the person who said XYZ to find out what they actually meant, rather than our interpretation
Right.
of what they meant.
Mm. I think it's like when you're saying all of that, both of you, like it just again reminds me of just when I talked about some of the stuff about like illusions of urgency, is like that. I think it ties so much into that I think I've kind of grown up thinking like everything has to be figured out now. Like everything is like, so like you have to, it's like right now. And then just to see like even that is such a, just a belief, and that, you don't actually have to figure everything out now. And like you can, what you said, Jen, about like, what if you just to know that even if you don't know now, you could wait until later, or just, maybe it would look different, then. And so it is just, again, just so wild.
Yeah. How things change, right?
Yeah.
Events, circumstances, situations, almost like looking in, remember the old kaleidoscopes, right? Where you turn it and the scene changes colors and things. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We got a kaleidoscope for our mind, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so cool. I'm so glad you two were on this call. I think it was a lot. Real lot.
Yeah.
Have you, what's that, Jen?
It's been a lot, yeah. It has.
Yeah, a lot was said.
A lot of ground.
Have you had the opportunity to hear Keith Blevins, Dr. Blevins yet? It's a wonderful interview. So it's on Mystery School. Give a listen.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, he did a wonderful job, I thought.
I love Keith. He's really neat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rita, did you, I think you were on Rita's show, right?
I listened to that. Yeah, I listened to her. She's pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so fun that we're getting these people. Bill Pettit's going to be on, Dickin Bettinger. Who else signed up? Rohini Ross is next in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So good. Yeah,
it's
really beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for doing that, Lori, like interviewing and sharing.
That's another thing that just happened. It just happened because Tom told me about Azul, and Azul, it's funny because I mentioned this to Azul, and she said, no, I thought of it. And I'm thinking she thought of it. Isn't that funny? We don't know who thought of it to interview these people. We have no idea.
Oh, that's so
She
good.
thinks I thought of it, and I think she thought of it. Isn't that cool?
That is
It's-
really
But
cool.
that's always how it
Nobody
is. It's
owns
funny.
an idea.
Yeah, right.
Nobody owns an idea. It just comes from who knows where, and somehow you make it happen. It wasn't that difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it's been really fun. Yeah, it's been really nice. And that was, yeah, the call with Rita was so touching. I just loved it. That was really nice.
What was
I wanted to
touching?
go, the call that you did with Rita, just, I thought it was just really, I just felt very moved throughout the whole call. It just was really, it was just really
Oh,
lovely.
nice.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
And I did want to say
Yeah.
quickly too, I know that we're at time, but I loved your story, Lori, about your hike with your friend and just, like what you were seeing. And I know you ended up talking about that on the Wednesday call, but I thought that was so neat too.
Yeah. Life is fascinating, isn't it? You
It is.
just never, I mean, that was a clear as day story of you never know what's going to happen. And you know that you have wisdom to draw on no matter
Yeah.
what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
You just go in the direction of what wisdom is telling you.
Mhm.
And it's clear, if you have a bad feeling, it's not wisdom. Wisdom
Yeah.
never feels bad. Never.
Yeah.
Mm.
It
Yeah,
feels like
that's so good.
gratitude, it feels like gratitude. It feels like, it's just hard to even put words to it. Like, you can trust, like trusting in this wiser place where we've all tapping into it.
Mhm.
Except we forget. That's the only thing is we forget.
Yeah.
So ladies, I'll see you next
Yeah.
Monday.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, it was so good to see you guys. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
so
Good.
Seeing you guys too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.